Tyra Eberwein from Tyrabundance. Welcome to the Vegan Champion Podcast. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. It's evening here and it's morning there.
Yep.
So awesome to have you on. Thank you for taking the time. And yeah, I'd like to just welcome you to the show. And I want to get into your story, and you've got a really fascinating story that you've gone through, and I haven't heard the details of like all of where you come from and all that, and I'm excited to hear more. But I have followed you on Instagram, and I know you put out a lot of really good inspiring content on there. And yeah, so start off, tell people a little bit about yourself. Where can they find you on social media so that when they're listening they can be checking out your Instagram and all that?
Cool. So you can find me on Instagram at Tyrabundance. So that's just literally my name, Tyra, Tyra, and then abundance at the end. I actually changed it. So I used to be Lift Vegan, but I didn't really want to box myself in the vegan label, and just like the lifting label as well. But we can discuss more about that later. But I am still vegan. That was like a big thing. Like I was scared that, especially because that was the time where like everyone was going ex-vegan, and I was like, guys, I'm not an ex-vegan. Don't worry about it. I'm vegan for life until I die. Um, so I'm currently in Australia. I'm not Australian, but I'm studying exercise and nutrition sciences at the University of Queensland, and I'll be graduating at the end of this year, which is really exciting. I grew up in Hong Kong, but I'm half Malaysian Chinese and half Swiss. Yeah, so I'm like all over the world, like really super international. And yeah, I went vegan when I was 16 or 15 years old, almost 16, on June 29th of 2016. It was a very special day for me. I remember like my best friend and I went to this vegan restaurant, this vegan buffet in Hong Kong. Have you ever been to Hong Kong?
I haven't.
Oh, okay. Well, there was this amazing like vegan buffet, and it was awesome. And ever since that day, I never went back. I never had animal products again, and it was it was a huge change in my life, and it was the best decision of my life. I'm sure that you can relate to that. Like going
Hmm.
vegan was just
Yeah.
amazing. And um, I went mostly, of course there's like so many different reasons to go vegan, and it was all three factors, like the big three factors: the animals, health, and the environment. But the big one was for me was the animals. And I was watching all of these YouTubers, especially like That Vegan Couple. They were the big one for me. Um, and I really remember like before I went vegan, like, especially because I'm Swiss, right? Half Swiss. I would eat so much cheese and so much salami and so much steak. Before I went vegan, I was paleo. So I was eating like 6 eggs a day, like 2 steaks a day, like chicken breast all the time, no carbs. It was like so super
Hmm.
like scared of eating rice, scared of eating potatoes and whatnot, which is really funny because like now I'm eating like pretty much the complete opposite. Um, and I would be watching like these YouTube videos, like especially That Vegan Couple, and I'd be like listening to them like, yeah, that makes sense, like the animals and the health and the environment. And I'd look down on my plate and I'd be eating eggs and I'd be like, what am I doing? Like I'm a walking contradiction.
Hmm.
Um, and I was actually going to wait until university until to go vegan because I felt like I wanted to be more free and such, and I was scared that my parents would not support me in that decision. But when I was 16 and I was watching all these videos, and you like once you watch the slaughterhouse footage, you can't unsee it, and
Hmm.
it animal products just don't become food anymore.
Hmm.
It's violence and suffering and torture, and I I like literally could not consume it anymore. So actually, when I went vegan, I told my family that I was going vegetarian because they thought that maybe vegan would be too like extreme or whatever. And my mom did tell me that. She was like, "Oh my god, vegan? That's too extreme," and stuff like that. And I was like, "Mom, it's extreme to eat animals and animal byproducts. Like, why are we drinking milk? We're not baby cows." And
Yeah.
then it was really funny because my dad's a chef. So I
Mm.
thought that he might have been the one that was not supportive, but he was super supportive. He's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll just cook like vegan food for you." And
Cool.
it was my mom like thinking that I was like going on a diet, and I was like, "Mom, this has nothing to do with me. It's about the planet and the animals and the environment. Of course, it is to do with my health as well, but in the long run, like it's not as important." But yeah.
That's super cool. So your dad embraced it. Like he was did he take it kind of as a challenge?
Yeah, exactly. And he's kind of the person that's like, if you're happy, I'm happy. So that
Hmm.
was like, I was really so happy about that. But my mom's super supportive now. She loves it. She's like, we're always eating like vegan meals together, going out to new vegan restaurants. She'll tell her friends like, oh my god, my daughter has like this huge Instagram and like she's vegan and stuff like that. So it's really cute. My whole family is super supportive now, which is really nice.
Wow,
Yeah.
very cool. So do you get some inspiration from your dad, or do you guys like to make food together?
Sometimes, but the problem with my dad is that since he's a chef, his palate has been so desensitized over the years. So everything he makes is super salty and super oily, and I don't add oil or salt to any of my meals. So whenever I eat his food, it's just like my tongue just dies, and like after finish eating, like the saltiness and the oiliness just does not come out. Like even after I brush my teeth, it's so bad. But um, now like my dad will just like eat healthier foods with me, or like I'll cook the food and we'll eat it together. What's actually really interesting with my dad is that um his diet is awful, like really really bad, and he knows that, and he drinks a lot of alcohol. He eats so much processed meat and cheese. And so what he does is that for the past 20 years, every April and November, he will go vegan pretty much. He doesn't call it veganism or like plant-based, and it's like pretty much a crash diet. It's really awful. He'll only like for the first 2 weeks, he'll only eat like um if it's summer, he'll just eat like raw fruits and veg, but it's like super low calorie. And then he'll like eat like cabbage soup if it's in winter. And it's really interesting because during this time he'll lose so much weight, and then his cholesterol will go down so much, and his high blood pressure will be pretty much like reversed. It's like he's reversing his heart disease. And then all of a sudden, like in the other months of the year, he'll just go back to eating whatever he wants. And that works for him. But I just tell him, I'm like, why couldn't you just do that like throughout the year? Like you'd be so much healthier. But it's just something interesting that I thought I would share because it's
Hmm.
so, yeah, I don't know. Everyone's so different with their like diets and eating patterns. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you shown? I only recently showed my dad like full on, slaughterhouse footage, and he had quite a strong reaction. I don't know if your dad has seen that kind of stuff.
That's the problem, is that even though my dad lives in China, and I'm sure the practices of slaughter in China are really awful, but of course he's a European, right? And he grew up in Switzerland, where everywhere you go you see the happy cows or whatever out in the fields. I remember once we were in Switzerland and we were up in the mountains, and I was vegan at the time. It was like my first year of veganism, and we saw this like little farm, this dairy farm, and my dad, thinking, oh, cows, like Tyra will love that. He was like, hey Tyra, look at the cows. And I looked, and they were all in their little like tight confined spaces, and I just started crying. And my dad looks at me and he's like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. But it was just like, because he sees it as, oh, these cows are treated well and such, but I just see it as like enslavement. And it's really hard when you have like those different cultures. And of course my dad, like, of course with age as well, like the older you are, you're more used to doing whatever you're wanting to do, except especially
Yeah.
with my mom. Like I used to do pig vigils in Hong Kong, and we would go to the slaughterhouse and such. um, and I really wanted to bring my mom, but she told me she wasn't ready, and she always told me, I'm not ready, I'm not ready, I'm not ready, because it was every month, right? And I was like, Mom, just come with me. Like, you don't actually see the pigs being slaughtered or anything. It's just we stand outside, and we're present with them, and we give them some sort of hope, that there are people out there that care for them, right before they go into the slaughterhouse. And she was always like, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. And I was like, Mom, do you think that these animals are ready to die? Like, they're never, like, you're never going to be ready. I never felt like I was ready to go. um, but
Yeah.
it's just about what's more important. And so my mom never came with me, and she never wanted to watch the slaughterhouse footage, but my stepdad came with me. And it was really interesting. When he came with me, he felt so awful. And then that night he goes home, and then he ate a steak with my mom. It was just like, I don't know, it felt so like we had lunch together that day after the pig vigil, and he ate vegan with me. But then that night he just ate steak again because that's just what he was used to, and it's this disconnect that really hurts. But I know everyone is like that. Like when I was younger, oh, I was that kind of person that was like making fun of vegans. I was the person that was like, oh, I would never go vegan. I love steak too much. And it's just really funny to look back and think that I used to be like that. I used to be the person that, I know this is really awful, but this is the truth. I used to be like, hey, you know what? Since we eat, sheep and cows and chicken and whatnot and fish and pigs, why don't we just eat dogs too? Like they're the same thing. So I was like the opposite mindset. I was kind of like, why don't we just eat all animals? And then I realized I'm like, why don't we just not eat animals at all? But I was thinking like, what's the difference? Like we might as well just eat dogs as well. And all my friends thought I was crazy. But in reality, I mean, like we were all crazy because we were all eating animals. And then eventually I made the connection.
You asked
Yeah,
enough questions.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what it's all about. People have to ask smarter questions, and like I can relate. And in the comments on social media, it's easy to relate. Everybody's going through the process of like, first they're all ridiculing it and they're like dropping their anger on you for speaking about animals, and then they keep asking, and then they probably disappear from the comments, and they probably go watch some documentaries, and then like sooner or later. But a lot of people shut off, and I think there's something really powerful about my mom does the same thing. Like just you were saying, you're trying to get your mom to go out to a vigil, and I've said the same thing because my mom recently, she's seen some footage and like just getting all teary-eyed and like just really connecting with the animals in a way that like she hasn't. And like, yeah, I remember when I went to my first vigil, and I was like bawling my eyes out on the way to the vigil, just on the way to the vigil, not even at the vigil. Just like, so yeah, vigils are hardcore. Well, in terms of the experience like that they can provide. So I understand why people say I'm not ready, because yeah, I mean, I've been to vigils and people have like pretty crazy reactions to what's going on there, and rightfully so, right?
Yeah. It's awful. It shouldn't exist. It shouldn't be happening.
Can you maybe tell us about, because you said in Hong Kong you were attending vigils on kind of a regular, what is that? I mean, paint a picture for, first of all, if anybody's listening, they don't even know what a vigil is. What is a vigil, and like what was your first, maybe what was your, tell us about your first vigil experience and how that all went down.
So a vigil is basically when we go outside the slaughterhouse and we're just present with the animals, and it's kind of like a peaceful protest in a sense. We would have signs, showing that pigs were. Oh, it was really really interesting as well because um, this pig slaughterhouse in Hong Kong, it's actually really, it's a really strange location. Every time you would take the train over the ocean, or is it, yeah, the ocean, you would actually see the slaughterhouse, but it looks like a car park. Like you would not think it's a slaughterhouse. It's really strange. And then when you actually go there, it's very hard to actually like walk. Like, so we wouldn't have people passing by, but right across it is a cemetery. So, which is really, really strange. So you'd
Whoa.
have people like going to visit their families and like, pray for the dead and such. And then right across the street, literally right across the street, there
Whoa.
was pigs screaming and being slaughtered. And it was just like so ironic. And I was just like, what is happening? Like, it was very, very strange. So we would have signs and such. So not a lot of people would be passing by, but the people that did pass by thought we were crazy. They thought we were really stupid. The slaughterhouse workers would look down on us, like from the slaughterhouse, and they would be laughing at us. And the manager would always come to the front, and he would be so pissed off at us. But we weren't doing anything. We weren't actually going inside the slaughterhouse. It's just about like being outside. And when the pigs come in, we would, some people, depending on like how close you want to be with the pigs, would pet them or give them some water, as well as just be present with them. And they would be just, so dehydrated, and they would have like bruises all over them, and they would be crying and screaming. The screams are really awful. And then you look into their eyes and you notice their eyes are so similar to human eyes. And they have so much fear in them and pain. And sometimes in Hong Kong, especially in summer, it can get so hot. And some of them would actually be dead already in the trucks before they got into the slaughterhouse, and that was the most awful thing. And they would be trampling over each other because these really confined spaces, and they'd be like gnawing at each other's ears, and they'd have like awful infections and such. It was really, really awful. Um, and it's actually really funny because, well, it's not funny, but now I look back at it, it's funny. But my first vigil, the next day, I ended up in the hospital for a colon inflammation. And I had thought maybe it's because I had touched the pigs and I had some sort of infection or something. And it turns out I found I had a ginger intolerance. But
Oh,
um,
wow.
yeah, it was really weird. It was a really strange 2 days. I was like super emotional, and then the next day I ended up in the hospital. And then it was the time that I had my final exams for high school as well, so I was super stressed out.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, so that was my first experience. And we'd also like film them, and I would put them on YouTube, um, and I would get like 50,000 views on some videos. But then all the comments were like, bacon, or like, oh, why are you crying about pigs when there are people starving in this world? And I'm like, why do we have to only pick like one thing to fight for? Why can't we just pick for equality for all? It was just really strange to have like all those reactions. And so we got the footage, we could put it online and share their stories and just be with them. And it was really interesting because we started getting a lot of media press, because this was the first time there's ever these like vigils in Hong Kong, especially because in Asia I feel like we're really behind in terms of animal activism and such compared to America or Australia. And so this was the first time we'd ever have like any slaughterhouse vigils. Like Hong Kong, they really hide the slaughterhouses, or a lot of our meat is imported from China. So yeah, we got a lot of media attention. When we started after the first vigil, they started like increasing the security in the slaughterhouses, and it was really interesting. But we weren't doing anything illegal. Sometimes the police would come, but um, it was kind of just there just to look over us, and yeah. But it was a really tough experience, and um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think vigils are something that people can definitely get a valuable experience from. Like, what it's kind of a weird thing. Like what do you say? Like, do you recommend somebody go to a vigil because it's like a good, pleasant experience? Like, no, it's not like a good thing that I would like recommend to have a good time. I would recommend it because for me, it really like lit a fire underneath me that was like, it connected me with like the depth of like what's going on. Cause like just going to that one, whatever the slaughterhouse is you go to, just going to that one spot is like literally so insignificant in the vastness of like the injustice when you think of the whole planet.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it is a connection that I feel like I just like people are like, why do you spend so much? Somebody's like, are you getting paid to like do this and make money? It's like, man, like if I was wanted to make money, I would not be doing speaking up for animal rights. Like there's so many more things I could do to make money. I do this because like I literally like can't sleep at night if I'm not like proactively trying to end this injustice. And just like it's just it's in your face. If you do nothing about it, and just sit at the table with the rest of society and dine at this injustice fully knowing of what's going on. I can't do that with integrity. I can't. I can't be a human being with integrity and partake. I have to be an activist and step away from that. But how do you feel about that, and what do you say to other people who might not be so willing to like go against what's happening in society? Like, what is it that you sort of had a caveat moment there, and you decided that you wanted to stop participating, from an ethical connection, and what effect does that have on your life? I mean, your social life, say before you're vegan and then after you're vegan, like how have you approached, I mean, obviously with family members and stuff like that, like you have to make certain decisions about, like some people will take the liberation pledge. I don't know if you've done that, but like I haven't, and I've thought about it, but where do you sit on that kind of thing? Like where talk about relationships with other people sitting at the table. How do you conceptualize all of that?
Yeah, it's hard. And I feel like that's a huge barrier for people. Like they just like socially they don't they don't want to go vegan because, I don't know, their family's not supportive of it. They might like feel isolated from your friends and such. But I feel like if you're going vegan and your friends don't support you in that, or like they make fun of you, of course jokes are like light jokes are fine, but like if they're like legit, like they don't want to spend time with you anymore, then it kind of shows who your real friends are.
Yeah.
And I always say that your family will have to just adapt, and they will support you, and you have to make your own decisions. I
Right.
feel like a lot of younger people want to go vegan, 15, 16 years old, and they're like, oh, I'm not an adult yet, and my parents won't let me go vegan. And I felt that way too, but I felt so strongly about it. And I'm a kind of like all in kind of person, like very extreme. I do things 100%. Even though I went vegan overnight, I don't recommend it. Like if people feel like they want to take steps, then that's completely fine. Like everyone has their own journey. But I felt like after I made the connection, I could not eat, like it was not, as I said, it was not food anymore. So I told my mom. I remember that actually the last animal product that I ate was like specifically like this noodle dish with shrimps. And like even though like they're just small little shrimps, when I ate them, because my mom pretty much forced me to eat it, and I was like, okay, so I ate it. I just felt so awful, and I felt like I just saw all the animals, especially in the ocean, like being taken away from their homes and such. And like after that, I was just like, you know what, mom, I can't do this anymore. Like it's either I eat vegan or I don't eat anything at all. You can choose. And when I tell that to people, people are like, whoa, like I could not do that like against my mom. And I was like, yeah, but it's nothing to do with like my mom. It wasn't nothing to do with me. It was to do with like the planet, and people should respect you for that. But in terms of socializing, so basically my friends were really supportive. Like after I went vegan, they would like try vegan places with me, or at least we would go to places with vegan options. um, like my mom, also with my mom, she would always research like, hey, there's this like new vegan restaurant or whatever, let's go try it out. What I do with my family as well is I'll say, hey, let's all get like a lunch together, like whenever I go back to Hong Kong, and we'll go to a vegan restaurant and it's on me, so I'll pay for it as long as everyone's eating vegan. So, and they're like, oh yeah, sure, like free food, like whatever, right? So that's also a good thing, like if you have the money for it. Or if you're cooking meals, just try new recipes with your family. What we would do is that at home would, like, food didn't change that much, because in Asian culture, what we do is like usually we would have like multiple meals, like multiple dishes, and we just share it. So usually we'd have like a rice dish, like just rice, and then we have like a vegetable dish, and then we'd have a meat dish, and then we would just have like an extra like tofu dish, and then I would pick from the rice, the veggies, and the tofu, and then everyone else could just have everything else. Of course, like it was really hard sometimes, like having meat on the table, but I feel like that's just the world it is right now, and things are changing, which is really great. And I didn't want to isolate myself completely, or else I feel
Right.
like maybe I wouldn't have any friends. But that's another thing. Like that's why I also started my Instagram, and started sharing my food on my Instagram, because there's a huge community out there, and it makes you feel less alone. So there are people that can relate to you and such. So Instagram definitely helped me throughout that transition. And my best friend actually went vegan the same time I did. Coincidentally, we were both like, hey, I'm actually thinking about going vegan. The other one was like, oh yeah, me too. So we went vegan together. So we
Oh,
had
that's
that support
cool.
as well, which was really, yeah, it was really awesome. So I didn't feel too alone, which was good.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, that's yeah, I always love to hear what people have to say about that. And I respect that like everybody's different because we're all in different situations, right? Like some people are living on their own and they can just go vegan overnight, like just boom. And some people have a partner, some people have kids, some people have parents, some people have different people in their life that they have to kind of negotiate with. And I think it's always nice to hear what people have to say about how they approach it. And yeah, I'm at the same point now where I haven't taken the liberation pledge because I kind of side with you on this one. Like we do need to be in the real world. Like I would rather be like, let's say we're at, I don't know, some sort of a conference or some sort of a wedding or I don't know, like a party, like, I would go and I would speak to people about veganism, or maybe not, maybe just go and have a good time. Right. Like depends. Like, I don't know. but it's not necessarily a bad thing on the other hand. And I have a lot of respect for the people who just like put a fork around their wrist and they're just like, yeah, I'm not sitting anywhere, I'm not participating. Like I have a lot of respect for that at the same time. Yeah, and I think it's really interesting too because yeah, I mean, talking about Instagram and talking about social media, why not try to? I mean, I haven't taken that liberation pledge where I'm not partaking at all. I'm not sitting at any tables or whatever. But I have, you know, through just networking and like meeting new vegans and whatever, I can't even tell you the last time that I was at like a table that wasn't vegan, because like my family, like we're eating vegan in my house, like everybody in my house is eating vegan now or plant-based, you know, like and you know, all my friends are pretty much like every now and then, you know, out with friends who you're at a restaurant and somebody gets something, you're like, oh okay, like it's like a weird thing when it happens, right? And it's like
Yeah, actually, sometimes I forget the world isn't vegan, like, because I surround
yeah,
myself with so many vegan people, and
uh-huh,
then I go out and I'm like, oh my God, like, why is there meat? Or I was like, fuck, like, oh, sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this podcast, but
we'll
I'm
put it
just like,
explicit.
okay, but like, I'm just like, oh my God, no, like sometimes I forget. I'm like, because it's so normal, and especially like, because I'm like 4 years, almost 4 years vegan now. It's like, it feels like my whole life I've been vegan, or at least I wish I was vegan my whole life. Yeah, I know what you
Yeah,
mean.
I feel the same way. So easy to forget. And I think it's good that like like one of the things that I've changed my mind on since I started this podcast like a couple of years ago. I I originally wanted the podcast to be only like vegans, and then I'm like, well, how do you do that? Like, you can't really do that, right? Like, I would rather have actually the opportunity that like I could invite like non-vegans on and have conversations about veganism. I think that's really productive, because if it's only vegans and we're just in an echo chamber talking to each other, like, okay, like that's kind
Yeah,
of cool, but I'd rather like have the discussions, right?
exactly. Yeah.
So how do you see yourself in terms of what, you know, what do you want to do for like the vegan movement? Like how do you think about, you know, making a difference in the world, or you know, sharing this message?
Personally, for me, so that's why I'm studying exercise and nutrition sciences. Like, I really want to change what we're learning in terms of nutrition. I think Australia is really great. Veganism comes up a lot in our lectures, in our nutrition classes. It even came up on our exam. So like I like had like a little like, oh my God moment like in my exam last year. Um, like our last case study was like, oh, there's this guy called Bob. He's like overweight, has high blood pressure, he's like pre-diabetic, and he wants to go vegan. Like, what would you suggest in terms of nutrition? Like what he needs to, you know, make sure about, and like things like B12, of course, and then iron and calcium and whatnot. And it was like so amazing when I saw that. I was like, wow, like the world really is changing to have like all these kind of, you know, things pop up. So it's being like recognized, which is amazing. So that's what I really want to do is I want to, in terms, I feel like the health message and the health approach is easier for people, and then that's what a lot of people do. Like they find veganism or plant-based diets through health, and then eventually they get exposed to the environment and the health, sorry, not the health, the ethics behind it. So I think that's a really good approach. And I feel like so many, I mean, you probably know this, but like so many of the leading causes of death and disease is due to diet and lifestyle. So that's what I want to help people without. And like also with activism and the environment, I feel like there's so many different outlets and different ways of activism, like Instagram or YouTube or, you know, Cube of Truths and Vigils, and it all applies to different types of people. And I think they're all important as long as they're not violent in any way. Um, but yeah, for me personally, I want to go for the nutrition route and help people eat more plant-based, at least. You know, if I don't know if, as much as I want the whole world to be vegan, I'm not sure that's like, do you think the whole world's gonna go vegan?
I have to have like that as the goal. That's what I've decided. Is like the goal is to make the world vegan. That has to be the goal. Whether or not it's possible, like time will tell. But that's
Yeah,
like the goalpost I've set, you know.
yeah. I mean, I would love the world to go vegan, and especially like, like with this virus, I'm always thinking like, this would have never happened if the world was vegan. Like, it's so annoying. But I feel like as long as the world is moving towards more plant-based, then the environment can heal again. Also, I'm also looking really into like in vitro meats. Like, I think that could be the future. Of course, I wouldn't personally eat it, but at least that would take out the environmental side of it, like land use and water use, as well as factory farming. Because some people just, I don't know, people are so, they have such a huge ego and they attach that ego to eating meat. And even my mom, she's always like, I don't think I could go vegan because it's just not fun. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, and then she's like, I want to eat like my meat and my dairy and such. And I'm just like, okay, mom, like, okay. Some people are just so attached to it. And it's also like based on culture and yeah. I don't know. It's really interesting. I try not to overthink about it too much because then it just makes me really sad. But I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful. I think the world has changed so much in the past like 5 to 10 years. So
I think so too. Yeah, I definitely think. And I'm hopeful too. And I would, I can't say that I don't have those same doubts like that you were expressing. Like it is really hard to see how the whole world could, switch and go vegan. But sometimes, actually, when I do the cube of truth, like if you've ever stood in a cube of truth and you see the people's reactions, actually that sometimes gets me really hopeful because you see like how people are just like really drawn into the footage, like when they actually get to see inside of like the world of like what it actually is happening in animal agriculture. It's like, whoa, like a lot of people really don't know. A lot of people are not okay with it. Like that's a
yeah.
thing that gives me hope, is that like people are not okay with it. Like 100%, if you've ever stood in a cube of truth holding footage and you see everybody looking at the footage, like, like it's not okay. And people who try to argue that it is okay, it's very difficult for them to do so, but it's socially accepted. So that's the war we have, this war we have. But I think you're right in what you said. That was, a lot of people come in for health reasons and they find the ethical reasons later. I see absolutely nothing wrong with taking the health angle, talking about plant-based, and like if people want to actually not even talk about the ethics at all and promote plant-based just for the health benefits, cool. Like I don't have any problem with that, like why I don't see why people would have a problem, because the
Yeah.
science is there. Like I don't know if you watched, did you see the Joe Rogan, the Joe
Yeah.
Rogan episode with
Yep.
James Wilkes?
All
And
3 hours of it.
oh,
Yeah.
okay, great. Oh, okay, awesome. Well, what did you think of that?
Oh man, I don't know, it was painful to listen to. I don't know. It was good. I'm happy that he had them on, but it was just like they were fighting. It was just hilarious. It was really funny to listen to, I think. But it was really great that, Joe Rogan was more open to it.
Mm.
Um, I feel one day he might go vegan. I feel it, it's in there. It's in there somewhere in him, but I don't know.
Did
It
you
was a very, very interesting conversation.
Did you see? I bring this up all the time. I bring this podcast episode up all the time because it's just, to me, it's so significant. But the funniest thing, right, about Joe Rogan, I think the same thing, right? Right, the next day after they uploaded it, he made a post saying that they had uploaded it, and in the description on Instagram, he said that he was thinking about completely deleting the original podcast that
Yeah.
Chris Kresser, because he was so convinced. At the end of the podcast, you heard, if you listen to the whole thing, at the end of it, Joe's just like, it's like he's the referee, right? And he holds up Chris Kresser's hand and he's like, Chris, you just like knock this one out of the park. Like, sorry, James is
Yeah.
the winner, right? James knocks it out of the park. Chris, sorry, man, better luck next time. But like the science is there, according to Joe Rogan, if anybody thinks that he should be the referee judge of the science.
Yeah.
But
I
James
mean,
Wilkes,
yeah.
no, what were you? Go ahead.
Now, all three of them were not like, even, yeah, that's what he said. James Wilkes was like always like, hey, why don't we actually have like an actual like doctor or a scientist on the podcast? Why does it have to be me? And
Yeah.
like there as well, like he's not really qualified, and it's just like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
very. It's
I want to
very.
try. Okay, so help me out here. Who should I have? If Joe won't do it, then I should do it. So who should help me pick a cast here? If I get to invite people onto the podcast, who should it be? It should be what, like Neil Barnard or somebody?
Yeah,
Who would your pick be?
or no, I pick Michael Greger.
Michael Greger. And versus
Yeah,
who would be
he's
the
very
the
good at
opponent?
talking, but Barnard is really good as well. I'm not sure. Would you want to have like a pure? I don't know. Would you want to have someone that's like super pro like carnivore or like super pro just like an omnivorous diet?
I guess to make it fair, you'd have to have some different representations, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Because
I don't
some of
even
the like
know.
the carnivore doctors, some of them are just I don't know. They're in a whole nother world. Just the things they say. It's just it's awful. But I feel like Joe Rogan should have Dr. Michael Greger on his podcast. I think that would
Mm.
be really cool. I don't know why he hasn't had. I feel like he feels like probably. I'm sure that they would be happy to be on his podcast, but it's more of him like, oh, if I do have them on my podcast, then maybe I have to think and change my mind in a sense.
Yeah, and I wonder about his sponsors too. He's so heavy into like the hunting and all the meat and all that stuff. I
Yeah,
think he's so deep in it. I think he's probably got a lot of sponsors and a lot of just relationships that like that's yeah. And I think that's a big part of it. Like going back to why I think I have a hard time seeing the whole world going vegan. Like the hardest part is that it is so ingrained into like culture. Like there's this whole thing about hunting but I hope we can like, yeah, reframe what that all looks like. I mean, why is that seen as like a manly, courageous thing
mm,
when really it's like the most cowardly thing? Like you have
yeah,
this massive advantage over like this peaceful animal. It's just going about the day, and you're just,
yeah,
it's pretty cowardly. So anyway, not to get onto hunting, but we were talking Joe Rogan, and it's super interesting. That's I think a very good route to go is talking about health, and physical benefits. What advice would you give to people, or maybe let's rephrase that. What have you found to be a good template for you in terms of feeling satiated? Like if we can give people some tangible advice and shift gears a little bit now, because like there's honestly so many different kinds of plant-based eating, right? Like there's people who will say this diet or that diet, or high fat or low fat, and
yeah,
like count your calories or don't, or like refined sugar or none. And like, I'm always curious to get people's thoughts on that as well, where you sit on
yeah.
diet.
Okay. I always say just first off, eat enough calories. People always like they don't realize that plant foods are much more nutrient dense and much less calorie dense than animal products. So when they go vegan, they end up like not eating enough, and then they're like, oh, I'm tired, must be the vegan diet not giving me enough protein and energy. And it's just like, oh my god, I hate the protein argument. Like, but then people get so obsessed with like carbs and fats, not eating. People don't eat enough, either don't eat enough carbs or fats or both. um, I do believe in a whole food plant-based diet. I do believe in having mostly carbohydrate, like high carbohydrate diet, but that doesn't mean no fat. Like I don't like of course I'm still like almonds and walnuts and cashews, just nuts and seeds, like in general, so important. Avocados, olives, whatnot. Um, just having a wide variety of foods, not boxing yourself in like, of course, like every now and then I will have, it's really funny, a lot of people ask me like, oh, how long have you been raw vegan and such, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, have you ever seen the things I post? Because every now and then I do love like, having a durian monomeal or jackfruit or banana monomeal or whatever, but that's very like, that's like maybe like 1% of the time. It's just really important to have like a wide variety of foods and not to box yourself in these like little like groups like raw veganism, fruitarian, or super super duper low fat. Of course, I don't eat like I personally don't cook with added salt, oils, or sugars. But if I'm gonna eat out, like who cares? Like every now and then, like eating vegan junk food and stuff, and trying new things, trying processed foods. I think that's really important for your mental health and your physical health as well. But as always, like a majority of your foods are whole foods. So eating enough, just eating a wide variety, and not being too obsessive about it. And that's the problem with a lot of these ex-vegans, you know. They get so obsessed about their diet. They eat super, like, being vegan, like, we're already, like, you know, taking out a few foods, or foods, in quotation marks.
Right.
So
Yeah.
why would we want to, like, be even more restrictive? And there's such an abundance of foods. Like, before I went vegan, I always tell people this and they never believe me, but it's like, it's true. Like, before I went vegan, I never had sweet potatoes, and they're like my favorite foods. I never had avocado. I never had nuts and seeds. I never really ate beans or lentils. I never had all of these cool fruits like durian and jackfruit that I love so
Such
much.
such a good point. Neither had I before I went vegan. Neither had I. Any of these
Yeah, I
foods.
never tried tempeh, seitan, like all these like cool alternatives. I never had like cool whole grains. I never had quinoa. I never had like whole wheat, or I never ate oatmeal before I went vegan. Like,
Wow.
the reason I started eating oatmeal was I watched that vegan couple and they were always eating oatmeal. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna buy like a bag of oatmeal, and like instead of eating my eggs in the morning, I'll just eat oatmeal. And then I was like, wow, this is so cool. And like oatmeal is like, yeah, I don't know. It's really weird. Like, veganism does not have to be restrictive. So I just say, like, eat a wide variety of foods. Make sure just as long as you're eating enough, you're gonna get enough protein. Don't worry about it. Supplement with B12. I don't know how many vegans I've met that don't supplement with it. I'm just like, oh
Mm.
my gosh, like, just, it's not that hard.
And
It's
why
cheap.
not? Why
Yeah,
not?
exactly.
You have nothing to lose. You
Yeah, you
know?
can't overdose, so you're just gonna pee out if you have too much.
Yeah. Safe
Get
bet
a
for
vitamin
sure.
D. Yeah,
Hmm.
if you're not getting enough sun. Otherwise, eat enough, like, I eat like flaxseed every day just to get my omega-3s. It's People think the only people that think veganism is hard are the people that are not vegan. Like, it doesn't have to be hard if you don't make it be. So be flexible, don't overthink it. That's my advice for people.
That is solid advice. Yeah, you sound like you've. It's they're doing something right over there in Australia with the nutrition. So which university are you at? You're at
University of Queensland.
University of Queensland. That's good. So you would recommend it? I
Oh,
guess
definitely.
I guess you got to wait and see though. The ROI. I don't know if do you follow Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah, but I don't know what the ROI is.
Oh, well, he talks about, I was just going to make a joke about, he always says like the ROI, return on investment of actually paying for university or
Yeah, oh, that's
whatever.
another thing. Because I'm an international student. Holy moly, it is so expensive. I feel so bad for my parents, but they're paying for it, and
Just be grateful, you know,
yeah,
he would say, be grateful, you know,
yeah,
and,
I
and,
am.
and it sounds like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's not like you're wasting their money. You're actually learning your stuff. Like when I listen to you speak, I'm like, okay, you know your stuff. Like, you know, like a lot of people, it's just amazing. The trolls who, like you say, they say, oh, it's so hard and you got to get your protein. And it's just like, wow, crazy. Like not that difficult, not rocket science. But
Exactly.
at the same time, you do need to know the ins and outs, right? Because I mean, nutrition is it is a science, and you need to understand the human body and food, and to be able to confidently say to people, for sure, like you will be, you'll be healthy. Like this is a healthy way to eat, and to know that you've researched the ins and outs, you're able to speak on it in a way that somebody like me wouldn't. Like I haven't formally studied nutrition, so when I speak about nutrition, I'm cautious not to go into details and to keep things vague, and it's about what works for me. And I would agree with, yeah, basically everything you say. I don't think I heard anything that I would disagree with in terms of food. Like I do add some, maybe I'm a bit more lenient with like salt and oil and sugar at home. I'll have a bit of that, but I definitely keep it on the DL, because that stuff, if you have, especially oil, I think is probably the worst. Yeah, oily food, not a
Yeah,
fan, but avocado, like all day,
yeah,
and I agree with eating the abundance, making sure that you're getting enough calories. I'm down with the brand change. Do you want to talk about that? What inspired because maybe we could get into,
oh
you
yeah,
were Lyft vegan, and then
yeah,
now you're
Tyrabundance.
Tyrabundance, right?
Yeah,
So you got the
so
abundance.
yeah, I I didn't want to. I mean, I'll be vegan for the rest of my life, but I didn't want to box myself in this like lift vegan kind of brand, especially because I'm coming into my last year and I want to set up my own website and maybe my own like nutrition consultation business or whatever, and I don't want it to be lift vegan, because as well as like it might like steer people away from it if they're like, oh, vegan, like, oh, I don't want to do that, whatever, like, yeah. And I also don't want to box myself in like only moving my body in a way that's lifting weights, and I love lifting weights, but for example, I haven't been doing that for the past 2 months because of the virus. I didn't do it for 3 months when I was traveling last year, and like there's just so many other things that I like doing. I don't want to be seen as like, oh, that's the girl that lifts weights and is vegan,
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
And so I was thinking of other ways. Like I want people to see, and whenever people would meet me, they're like, "Hey, that's Lift Vegan." It's like, no, I'm Tyra. Like, I'm not just that label. So I was always thinking like, okay, I want to use my name in a way that I can still like have my name, but then have something related to veganism as well as nutrition and food and health. So I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna change my name probably maybe to an acronym or to something that like extends my name. And then I was thinking of words, and I always use the word abundance because people always think veganism is super restrictive, but it's not. As I
Mm,
said, like I tried all these new foods, and there's so many plant foods. There's still so many things I haven't tried. And when I went vegan, I promised myself to try every single, new
that's cool.
whole or processed plant-based food. So that was really awesome. And
I wanted to ask you,
yeah.
what's your favorite one been? Your favorite, like, if you were to say of all the new foods you've tried as a result of
Oh,
like going vegan.
oh, easy. It's durian.
Oh yes, in the same camp. I'm in the durian
Yes.
camp as
Oh my
well.
God. And it's really bad because I'm Malaysian. I'm half Malaysian. So I'm like the worst Malaysian ever. Like I grew up like never wanting to try durian because it smells so bad, right? But now
Yeah,
to me it smells amazing. Like I love
yeah,
it. It's the best food, really the best food in the world.
yeah.
And so I never ever ever tried it. And then when I went vegan, I was like, okay, I have to try it. Like so like my aunts actually, they brought me to like a durian stall in Malaysia, and then they were so nervous. They're like, oh, she's gonna hate it, like, like even though I look Asian, they like see me as kind of like Western, and then and they're like, oh, she's not gonna like it, like she's not true Malaysian or whatever. And I had my first bite, and I was like, oh my God. And then they were looking at me like, oh, she's gonna like throw up or something. And I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever tasted in my life. Like it tasted like chocolate to me. I loved it so much. And ever since then, I've been obsessed with durian. Going to have you ever been to a durian buffet?
Oh yes, I've been to several. I'm lucky to have had some good durian buffets in my day. Where's the best one you've been to?
Oh, definitely SS2 in Kuala Lumpur.
Okay, I gotta hit that up.
Yeah.
Gotta
Oh,
hit it up.
so good. So yeah, definitely durian. What were we talking about? I totally like lost my track talking about oh, my Tyrabundance thing. Right. So, um, I decided to change it to Tyrabundance. It's actually an acronym, but I haven't really like because I'm also going to be setting up a website soon, but it's not up yet. Because I've been procrastinating. But basically, Tyra would be like the acronym is Thank You, Real Abundance. So it's basically just thanking our bodies and thanking our food, um, and embracing a healthy lifestyle. Yeah.
Ah, that's cool. Thank you, Real Abundance,
Mm.
Tyra. Yeah, very
Yeah.
cool. Very cool. I love it. Well, let's make sure that so everybody, if they want to check you out, the Instagram is that your main that's your
Yeah.
main platform for now. So
Tyra
it's
Abundance.
wonderful. And I want to make sure that we that we finish this story. So you gotta keep us updated with how it all goes, graduating. And because you say you're in school now, and what are the main things that you are thinking for the future? I mean, it's been really cool hearing your story of how going vegan has changed your life and changing perspective. And I think you've given some valuable insights as to how you've dealt with some of those changes and what you've experienced. And yeah, I'm always interested to hear what you're thinking for the future. So you got a website coming, you want to get into coaching, and I guess like you're still so young, you want to figure out what you have to find your path. You got to trial and error, right? And but what are you thinking now in terms of what you're most passionate about?
Well, the virus kind of put my plan, kind of postponed my plan, but it's okay. So basically, I was supposed to graduate. So my final exam November 21st this year. So I'm really excited for that. And then I was planning to graduate around December 9th. Like that was my ceremony. But then due to the virus, they're pushing my graduation ceremony to next year in January probably. So I have like a few, like almost like 2 months. So I'm planning to travel a bit with my family. Love traveling, travel a lot,
Oh,
especially because
cool.
my mom was a flight attendant. So we get, good flight tickets. So I'm going to be doing a bit more traveling, and then I'll be coming back to Australia in January for my graduation ceremony, and my visa ends in March. So I'm going to be trying to find a job so I can stay here, and I really love Australia. So, and I want to continue working in the nutrition realm. I want to work a bit, maybe 1 to 5 years, whatnot, and then I might go back and do my master's of dietetics. But I just want to go with the flow and see where life takes me. But yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Any last pieces of advice for anybody who's listening, who is, yeah, because you're young. I mean, what are you? You're 20, I think, right?
20, yeah.
So you were born. Okay, so you were born in uh, the year 2000, right?
1999.
Oh, 1999. Okay.
I'm 21 in August.
It's such a crazy, crazy year to be born in. It's I love that there are people who are younger than me that are taking veganism seriously. Cause like now it's crazy. Like I still feel like I'm, 16, 19 years old. Like I still literally feel way better because I'm in way better shape than I was back then. And, but nonetheless, like, it's like, wow, 10 years goes by, like I just turned 30 last week. And, it's just crazy to me, like how important it is to so many people. Like, do you think that there are enough young people who are starting to wake up to this? Like, how many vegans do you see who are kind of your age and younger? Like, somebody was saying today, and I was kind of worrying about this. Like, do you think that maybe the people who are like in their 20s and 30s and 40s now are more concerned with, let's say, I don't know, so for lack of a better term, social justice issues than, say, people who are younger than 20 now? Like, how would you assess the like lay of the land, like in terms of which generations care more or less than others, or about what issues?
Really hard to say. I think it depends where you are because there's different culture. I feel like younger people do care more, but they feel like they don't have as much power, I guess. And they're like, oh, I'm a kid. Like, what do I know? Like, I can't do much, And then you have like, but then you have like specific people that are like very open about it, like Greta Thunberg.
Yep.
Such. But older, I feel like I really feel like it depends where you are. For example, like when I was in high school, literally I was, people would always, I was the vegan, like
Mm-hmm.
there was only 2 vegans in my grade, and that was me and my best friend. So we were seen as like those weird people. But then in my university, especially my degree, there's actually a few vegans, and it was amazing, like that so many people were open to it. But then there are also people that are like, and they're usually the dudes, and they're usually like the really big masculine guys, whatever. They're all like a paleo, keto, carnivore. And it's just really interesting. But there are actually a lot of people that are really open to it. I think it really depends where you are. And it depends what you're exposed to, especially in Asia and Hong Kong. People don't really think about not even the animals or the environment or anything. They don't even get to think about themselves because they're so caught up in work. I know personally for my brother, because I have an older brother, he's 20, oh my God, he's 27 in like 2 weeks. And he's working in Hong Kong, and, he's just so busy and so caught up in work. Like, I know he's asked me like, why'd you go vegan? Like, who cares about the animals and stuff, like when I first went vegan. And it was kind of think like, he doesn't care about the animals, and he doesn't care about the environment, and he doesn't even have time to really like care about his own health as well, because he's just so caught up in work. Especially in Hong Kong and Asia, people are just working and working and working, and even overtime, and they just don't have any time to think about anything else, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it depends where you are, but I do think that the younger generation are opening up, especially because, they're on social media and they get exposed to a lot of things. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's super I have a lot of I mean, yeah, I'll say it. I have a lot of compassion for people who don't, like, literally do not have the extra energy to consider like the well-being of animals, just because they are 100% all day, like literally just like grinding all the time. And like people are suffering. Like it's not, it's like people are, people have mental health issues and, depression, and, people going through tragic points in their lives. And like, I understand that, people may not always be, ready to go vegan, and I don't necessarily blame them. Right. But I like to remain hopeful that there will remain this trend of like young people, caring about social justice. And it's always nice to see people like yourself who are young and you are unapologetic and you're advocating for veganism. And yeah, it's super inspiring to see. I love to see your posts. You've got some really heartfelt posts there on Instagram. It's been really, really cool to see you, sharing your view and your experience. So yeah, definitely a sincere recommendation for anybody listening to go check out your Instagram, because yeah, you're posting regularly all the stories and stuff. You got me salivating, just like this, amazing food that you put together. It's all super colorful and vibrant, and you can tell that you really put a lot of passion into the food that you create. And you do a great job of sharing it. So definitely recommended checking her out on Instagram. Come back again next time on the Vegan Champion podcast. It'd be great to have you. Thank you so much for
No,
all of your insights today. And yeah, have a great one. We'll see you next time.
thank you.